to our dad on the Cressman podcast.
With me on the podcast today, best-selling author, public speaker, and a guy with an incredible story. Cody Byrns, welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Glad to be here.
So you're based in Florida, correct?
Yes, Tampa, Florida.
Right. Now we should probably start off with what happened to you on May 31st, 2013. So why don't you tell everybody who's tuned in how your life changed that day?
Yeah, so setting the stage for the interview, back in that time period, I was 23 years old, traveling different parts of the world, even all over the nation, doing a lot of motivational speaking, leadership. Always had a passion to serve others, to give hope to people. And I did a lot of that through doing comedy and juggling. I've always had a fascinating interest in that realm. Started as a little kid and then growing up out of high school, doing all these different events, fairs, corporate events, had a blast doing it. But at the core of who I was and am, it was to give hope. And on May 31st, 2013, I had just gotten back from doing mission work in Cuba. I was there for a couple of weeks, training leaders and hundreds of children. We was working with them. And I was just on that mission. And then suddenly driving, it was a Friday afternoon. I went back to my office. I was stopped at a red light on the highway, and my entire life as I knew it came to a complete halt. And what I am told, and everything that I give in my messages, is that it's strictly from the first responders and police reports because I don't remember none of it. But I was stopped at a red light on the highway, and I was rear-ended by a refrigerator box truck that did not stop. And on impact of the box truck hitting I was in a Dodge Durango, my vehicle blows up into flames. It was pushed through the intersection into an embankment. And when the first responders came to the scene, by the looks of it, they said it's a fatality. And for those that may be interested, there is hundreds of photos out there. And there's a lot of photos that are publicly. You can Google my name and you'll see images of the wreck. And in the sheriff's department, they took hundreds of these photos. And I'm glad that they did, because for me to tell you the story, it's like, okay, but then when you see the images, it really puts it in perspective. And so when the fire department came, like I said, they said I was dead. There was actually a van in front of me, the stoplight that day. I was parked behind this van, and the van in front of me went to one side of the intersection. Mine was pushed through into this embankment. But the person that was in the van, they was helping her. They knew she was okay, thank God. I, on the other hand, they said, I'm dead. They didn't call the coroner. Yeah, they just said, yeah, just by the looks of it, they say, that's it. There's no way this guy is going to survive. Or they didn't know what I was. They didn't know if I was a male or female. They just knew that whoever's inside this thing, they're dead. However, somehow or another, they saw my hand move. And when they did, they changed their plans. It took them a good hour to get me out of this thing. They then put me on a stretcher. They life flighted me to a hospital in Evansville, Indiana. That's where I'm originally from. I've been here in Tampa since 2016. But Evansville, Indiana is the southern part of the state here in the United States. And then they redirected me to the burn unit in Indianapolis, Indiana. And there I was placed into a coma on full life support for 3 weeks. I had severe burn injuries. My face had second-degree burns. Second-degree burns, they don't scar. But then I had third and fourth-degree burns on 40% of my body. And fourth degree, I never knew there was such a thing. And what that is it burns through all of your fat cells down to bone and muscle. And in some cases, it requires amputation. And they actually wanted to amputate 3 of my fingers. And my family was there, great advocates. And they said, no, do whatever you can to save his fingers. He juggles. Of course, you could imagine the surgeon's face. They're probably like, really? You're kidding me? The guy juggles? What is this? But I was in the unit for a total of 2.5 months, had to go to rehab, had to relearn to walk, use my hands and everything. However, me coming to, it was very traumatizing. 3 weeks, 3 weeks in this coma. I didn't know what had happened to me. I am awakened to the words of my mother, and she said, Cody, you've been hit by a box truck. You're here in Indianapolis in the burn unit. Your recovery is not going to be an easy journey. You have severe burns, but no matter what, don't lose sight of your vision. Don't lose sight of your vision. And I think about that and how all of us in life, many times we find ourselves at red lights where life, as we're going along, we have these plans, these things that we're looking to achieve, when suddenly everything comes to a complete stop. Life as we know it is no longer the same. And it's
And what did she
extremely,
mean about not letting go of your vision?
yeah,
Was that the vision for your life, your mission, what you had accomplished in terms of service up to that point?
correct. Yes. Because she always knew I knew it was going to be worldwide. I knew and it was starting to get to that. At the age of 23, up to this point, I had already done so many different types of events, spoken to thousands upon thousands of people at a young age. I've always been very purpose driven. I always had that passion to serve and give hope. I'm a unique kid, got unique talents, but also at the same time, my motivation, my inspiration, it was much different than the typical 23-year-old. So I was very uh, just onward with what I was wanting to do and achieve. So by her telling me that, it was that reminder that I needed. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
us in our life, it's important that we have those people that are there to remind us to not lose sight of our vision when
She
life
was
suddenly.
reminding you to practice what you had been preaching up
That's
to
it.
that point in your life, right? With
Exactly.
yourself and apply it to yourself. And so in many ways, and I know I've watched some of your interviews and I've been privy to some of the things you've said about it. This tragic accident was a catalyst for you to be forced into that space to where you actually have much more credibility with your message now, maybe than you did before it actually happened. So in a way, it's like this backhanded blessing.
Mm. It really is, and it kind of elevated my platform all the more. And there's a powerful quote that I love. Now, this took some time. I'm kind of giving you what, the back end of like, all right, he's now speaking, traveling across the world. But it was a process for me to get from where I was to where I am today. But there's a quote that I love, and it's by Caitlin Walsh. And it says, the key to success is playing the hand you were dealt like it was the hand that you wanted. And I think about that, and it's powerful if you really let that set in. I always wanted to give hope. I always wanted to help people. Here, this incident occurs in my life. I can't control it. It just happened. I can't change the fact that I'm now burned and scarred, and my life is drastically changed. So, what am I going to do with it? When life hits us, what are we going to do with the pieces? And so, it was all a matter of me just coming to that point of saying, well, I can't change what happened. I can only change what might happen tomorrow, but it's all a matter of what I do today. That's what makes the difference. And it truly is a matter of practicing what you preach. At this time, I had a lot of people. News hit this story, thousands of people following a Facebook page that my family had started, people's watching my recovery and this whole process. And I'm thinking to myself, the message that I had taught for years, and now everybody is seeing, they're going to see if I'm truly going to live it out. And to your point, it's like we can talk a good talk all day long when life is going well, but then when tragedy strikes and rubber hits the road, our faith, our message, everything that we are about is put to the test. It's like the old illustration of when you squeeze an orange, that orange produces orange juice. When life squeezes you, what will it produce? What will you
Yeah,
produce?
there's a great quote. I believe it's in Corinthians, a biblical quote, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit here, but basically the gist of it is adversity inspires resilience, resilience inspires hope, and hope is undefeated, right? And
Yeah.
it's that it's that same idea encapsulating your story. And I think if there's a knock against your industry, it's that sometimes it is infiltrated by bad actors, by people who
Mm.
are full of shit and people who talk a good game but live their lives completely separate from what they articulate on stage. And and by the way, that's not an indictment on you. I don't think you were doing that prior to you having to be forced to live what you exemplified, but um, but it certainly would have been a test of faith like you
Mm.
had never experienced before up until that point. Now, how long did it take you before you started coming around and seeing the beauty and the positivity in this situation? Because, like you said earlier, it was very traumatic when you woke up. Like, at what point did you start to go, okay, wait, this can work for me, not
Mm.
against me?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good question, and it did take some time because I had those moments of like, all right, I'm grateful to be alive, but then there's those other moments of like, all right, well, I'm a person of faith. I respect everybody, but in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, God, thank you for saving me. But yet, why did you save me? Why am I here? And those moments of depression, they certainly kick in. And it's like, oh, okay, this recovery, it's not an easy fix. Burn injury is something that I have to live with for the rest of my life. I've now got these scars and got to monitor them. And I was in, like I said, I was in the burn unit for 2.5 months. Then I had to go to a rehabilitation center where I was monitored by nurses and doctors 24/7. I had to relearn to use my hands. I had to relearn to walk again, all the basics. I also had broken vertebrae. I think it's important to point those things out. I had broken vertebrae. I had became septic whenever I was in the burn unit, blood infection, pneumonia, all kinds of hurdles, and it certainly wasn't an easy ballpark to overcome. But after I got out of rehab or the in-stay rehab, I then had more outpatient therapy for almost 2 years, occupational and physical therapy, just trying to get to the point where I could be on my own again. But during all this time, you really start just examining yourself in life, and then you start reevaluating what is truly most important. And I think a lot of the things that I thought was important prior to this incident, when you're now in a case like trying to get back to living, you discover that some of the things I was once worried about really isn't all that important. And so I learned a lot about myself, but it was just a matter of having good mentors and people in my life to say, all right, Cody, we know what you are capable of doing, and we are going to encourage you to reach that standard. However, it was a choice on my part because still at the end of the day, I had to make the choice that I was not going to allow this incident to affect me. And it was kind of just going back to that mindset of like, what is my why? Why am I doing what I'm doing to begin with? What is the purpose of me speaking? It's to give hope. It's to give hope. And what better opportunity than to utilize this incident in my life to further enhance that message? And it was powerful.
And when did you start? And I imagine this was very therapeutic, even cathartic, writing your book. So, when did you start that process following the accident?
Yeah, so I'd released the book back in 2018. And so I would say at the beginning of 2017, I started writing because it was almost a good year for me to write it. And I had a lot of people that was mentoring me and guiding me in that process. A lot of editing. It was my first book and still is my first book and only book. And I do hope to write more in the future, but it was very therapeutic, just like you're saying, and just kind of going back to those moments. And I wanted the book to not only share my story, but more so help people find themselves in the story. And I think that's the big thing is people at the end of the day, people don't really care about me and my story because everybody has a story and everyone has gone through difficult times. We as people, we put different levels on, well, this guy's been through worse than I and etc. But I titled the book Scar Release. And scar release is a term that I heard often whenever I was in the burn unit. And for the sake of illustration, my hand had severe burns and it's scarred. And they give me skin grafts all over my hand and contracture scars. That's what I deal with. When a contracture scar occurs over the top of a joint, it can limit the mobility of that joint. And my hands had contracted to the point that I couldn't even hold on to a bottle of water. And so the therapist said, you're going to need to have surgery. So I go into the burn unit and the surgeons begin to assess me. They say, Cody, we're going to need to do a surgical contracture release or a scar release. And what that is they go in, they cut the scar at the root, and it frees up the scar and it allows you to be mobile and move. A scar release does not remove the appearance of a scar, it allows the mobility to move with the scar. And I love taking that and connecting it to everybody in life because I think many of us have been scarred in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not so much physically, but emotionally. And these scars may have occurred over different joints in our life. Maybe it was back in childhood. Maybe it was in our marriage. Maybe it was in a bad business deal or somebody said something that rubbed me wrong. And so now all of a sudden I find that I'm limited and my life is being affected. I now have these boundaries and these walls that have been built up and trying to guard, protect myself that has really limited me. and accomplishing my dreams and being that spouse, for my significant other, or being that parent for my children. The list could go on. And so it's all a matter of freeing up those scars. And how do you do that? You get to the root of it. What is it that you need to do to be set free? And in my case, my injuries were caused because of somebody else's poor choice. The driver of the truck was not paying attention, and he walked away perfectly fine that day. He had no injuries whatsoever. I, on the other hand, my life is now drastically changed. And I now carry the scars, the physical scars and the emotional scars, because of the poor choices of somebody else. And there's many people in today's world that could say the exact same thing. They're carrying scars because it's what somebody else did. And if that's the
Somebody
case,
else who
then
didn't face any consequences, or
exactly.
very little consequences for the pain that they caused other people. And learning to not only accept those scars but love them because they help define who you are by creating this mindset of resilience and empowerment that you live on with now. But a big part of that, probably, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, is letting go of the bitterness and resentment that you would have had to find some forgiveness in your heart for the driver of that other vehicle. Now, how long did that process start, and what was the catalyst for it?
Yeah, it started just, I would say, the moment I was kind of coming to and really grasping what my injuries are and thinking about what caused it. Because I'm also having those moments of like, well, I just want to stay alive. I want to get to where I can live again. But yet, all this pain, all this suffering that I am enduring is because of what this guy did. And it really sets with you, and you have moments where you get angry, you get bitter, you get upset. My family was very upset, and still to this day they have their moments where they kind of get a little off put because of what this driver did. I, on the other hand, God knows my heart, I have forgiven this individual, but it did take time. And I had to think about my own self and my own life. And I think, me personally, I think in order to receive forgiveness, we have to give forgiveness towards others. And, I am not a perfect being by any means. I've made poor choices in my life and I've been guilty of hurting others, maybe not intentionally, but accidentally. And I think to myself is that, how would I want somebody to do me? I'd want to be forgiven. And so I think it's important to do. It doesn't mean I condone what they have chosen to do. It just means that I'm no longer allowing what they have done to me to affect me in my life. I'm moving on. I am not um, being held captive to what they have done. And there's a lot of
Yeah, it's
people.
the idea of forgiving those for their trespasses as we ask to be forgiven for ours, right? Like it's
That's it.
that Christianity karma, right? That
Mm.
idea that exists in um, releasing resentment around a situation while continually asking for forgiveness for our own trespasses in our own lives. Now, have you been in touch with this individual? Have you had any contact with him?
No, no. And that's something too, is that I would love to see that come to pass, but I do know it's going to be a matter of me reaching out to him.
For
He,
sure.
he's never reached out to me or to my family. So it's one of those things that I'm kind of trying to seek guidance on, and how do I go about doing that? And so that's going to be a powerful closure to the story that has yet to take place.
I would imagine, unless he's a socio or psychopath, he feels terrible and
Mm.
probably just can't summon the courage to reach out to you. As is often the case when we've wronged people. Um, there's another great quote that I once heard, and I can't even remember where I referenced it from, but this idea that when we've wronged people, it's so much easier to demonize them than it is, to justify our poor behavior towards them than it is to actually own our own actions and make amends. And I understand that, and I think we've all had applications of that in our personal life. But um, I would be excited to hear when you've connected with this individual and how that process went for both you and him because, like I say, if he's got a shred of humanity in him, he probably is carrying that with him and thinks about it every day as well. And, probably in some ways equally emotionally traumatized, even though he didn't suffer the physical consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And it will be a matter of me just trying to carefully reach out to this individual and let him know that, no matter what, I want you to know that I do forgive you and I wish you well. And I want the best for you. And I think that is powerful in of itself. And, I'm moving forward. And my hope, once again, what is my why? What am I looking to achieve? Giving hope to people. And
Right.
how cool would it be that my scars and uh, whether it be physical or emotional, they can be turned around to help the very individual that had part in causing the scars that I carry. So it would kind of be like a full circle thing. All right, let's see this thing come to a close and let's move on and make the best of our lives.
Absolutely. Well, I wish you luck in that. And
Thank you.
I would love a follow up to find out how that went when it does inevitably happen. Let's talk about the book itself. So, Scar Release, Breaking Free of Yesterday's Troubles. It was a bestseller. How is that characterized? Not New York Times.
No,
Where was it a bestseller?
just Amazon. Amazon
Okay.
bestseller. Had a team of amazing marketing experts, and I mean, it took a lot of folks to help me be able to produce that effectively. And so, and it's been very exciting. It's been neat to hear the stories and the results. And then back in 2018, I did a radio and TV tour and launched that, and that was a lot of fun being able to do and just kind of get my feet wet in the realm of being an author and what it all takes. And it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding when you hear the stories of people that are being encouraged by it. And to me, that makes it all worthwhile.
What are the components of the book and your story that you get the most positive feedback from? What are the things that people come to you and say, this changed my life?
Yeah, I think it's the vulnerability, just being open and raw. And also, I discuss some of my faith in the book. And, as I shared, I respect everybody's belief system. And even the book, I approach it in that realm. You don't have to be a Christian. I don't force it on people. I'm just simply sharing my thoughts on what I had dealt with. And I think people appreciate the fact that I was open and honest and I addressed some of the questions that I had on why would God allow me to be burned and scarred and he's a good God. Why am I suffering? Why am I enduring these things? And then just being open and honest about my injuries. How are other people going to see me? And I think just being up there in the hospital, expressing the the process of what it was like to look on my phone and I see social media, everybody's life is moving on. Everyone is doing all these things. People are getting married, they're pursuing their dreams. There's other speakers that are out there traveling and encouraging thousands of people. And here I am in a hospital bed, just trying to get back up and live again. The world is moving on, and yet I feel stuck. And I think there's a lot of people that relate to that. And there's a lot of people that maybe be a death in the family, divorce, and especially so in this COVID-19 world that we live in. A lot of people, they feel, I think the whole world in general kind of feels stuck in some ways, but yet there are families that have lost loved ones or they're dealing with illness or they've lost jobs and well, the world is moving on and yet here I am, I'm stuck. Now what? How do I go from here? And so people, it's been and it helps me as a speaker to be able to know, okay, well, what are people really craving the most in this society? And that kind of leads me to the epic steps that I often teach whenever I go speaking at places. And I'd be more than happy to share them with you if you would like.
Let's do it.
Okay. So epic. So it's an acronym. And I always tell people we want to live an epic life. What is an epic life? Well, epic life, in my opinion, is that we embrace challenges. We understand that challenges will always present themselves at one level or another. It's just bound to happen. And then we have the P, which is provide perspective. Perspective. How can I look at this situation differently? What are the lessons I can learn in the midst of my pain? Pain is one of our greatest teachers. And if we just examine it, all right, I know what I can do better now. This is what I can learn. This is what's most important in my life, my priorities. I'm realigning myself. And then it's the I is implementing those changes, applying them lessons to our lives. And then we have the C, which is celebrate. Celebrate your story. Celebrate the fact that you're here, that you're alive. And out of that celebration, we're serving others. We're making a difference in today's world. There is power when we go from embracing our scars to celebrating them because they've made us a better person than what we were yesterday. I am grateful now. I'm 31 years old, and I am extremely grateful that I endured this incident in my life because it allowed me to grow and to mature in ways that I wouldn't have if I hadn't gone through this difficulty. And it has also furthered the message of hope all the more. I'm speaking internationally. I'm doing things I never thought I'd be doing, things I dreamed of doing, didn't know how I would go about doing them. And so it's very exciting. It's exciting to see. But out of that, once again, it's not about me. It's about what I'm doing, who I'm doing it for. It's about the people I'm serving. And as long as I keep others in the midst of my focus, so that like that's my main priority in my life, it just gets a lot easier.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast because a large cross section of my audience are artists, and they deal with failure and rejection all the time. They build up a lot of emotional scarring, and they're trying to find out or figure out how to cope with that. And I knew your story would resonate specifically with that audience because um, gratitude is something that you mentioned a number of times in this podcast, and I really do believe that that's the antidote to anxiety, bitterness, resentment, and um, and becoming so myopic on your own situation that you become cold and ignorant to those around you who are also suffering. So rather than serving, you get caught up in your own mindset. You're focused on your own problems, and there's this, it's not popular to say this, but there's a degree of selfishness associated with aspects of depression, right? You can't be depressed if you're focusing on serving and solving problems for other people. You can't be uh, depressed if you're filled with gratitude for your situation and you've shifted your perspective, as you put so eloquently, to now see what a gift this horrible tragedy was, in the long run for you as a human being and as a professional, right? So it's just so important, I think, for the artistic community to understand that just because you get turned down for a record deal or an agency or a management company, or somebody says something nasty about you on social media, when you have opened your heart with vulnerability and laid your music out there, your creation that you're so proud of, and the first comment is some dipshit tearing it down, like, they struggle with that. It's why mental health is such uh, an issue in the
Yeah.
arts, and I just had this feeling that you would be able to enlighten people on that. So I love the EPIC acronym, and uh, tell us a little bit about what you're working on next. Are you going to do a follow up to Scars? Are you going to write another book? Are you working in the television or film world? What's I mean, this story could easily be adapted to a screenplay, so I'd be curious to hear what you're working on.
Oh, well, thank you, man. And just what I think is so cool and what I love about what you're doing is on the artist front. My brother is actually a music producer, and but he had did writing, and he loves songwriting. Still is very passionate about it. And I relate from my brother. I see being turned down, and even as a speaker, I find myself, you're in that struggle where there's people that they love your work, but then there's others that they criticize it. And if you're going to do anything of meaning, you have to embrace criticism. It's bound to happen, but it's just a matter of utilizing those epic steps and moving forward. And when the timing is right, it'll happen. Nothing will be able to stop it.
But
And so,
not all criticism is constructive, and I think that
yes,
there is a distinction there, right? Some people
absolutely.
are just, they just want to see the world burn or their
Mhm.
little corner of it, so they just want to displace their own hate and pain and put it on someone else's shoulders. And some people actually have a perspective to offer you that might seem affronting, but really, if you absorb it, could help you be even better and refine your art, your craft, whatever it is that you're dedicated and passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's been able to know the difference between the two, man. And obviously a lot of that we can tell. The vibe is clear whenever somebody's just truly wanting to be mean. And there are a lot of folks like that. Unfortunately, they have nothing else better to do than the dog on the others. So we brush them off and we just move forward. And so you find that constructive criticism, be willing to take it, and it'll serve you good. But as far as for me, where I'm at right now, I've heard a lot of people say, just like what you said, they could turn this thing into a movie, and it would be amazing to see that happen. I don't know how that opportunity will present itself. I have talked to a guy that does a film festival out of Orlando, Florida, and he even said the same thing. So that's been a topic behind the scenes. People have mentioned it's just a matter of when the opportunity comes about. That would be really cool. But for me right now, it's just continuing to encourage people all over the world. And today's COVID world, that is a lot of just virtual events to corporate groups, universities, etc. I would like to write another book eventually. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And then also continue to encourage people on podcasts. I love being able to do this. I think it's powerful, and we all need each other right now in this day and age. I think more so than ever. Just knowing that you're not alone. You are not alone in your struggles. You're not alone in your journey. And no matter what life has brought you, there is a better tomorrow. Do not give up. Life is beautiful, my friends. And that's for everyone that is listening. Do not give up. The best is yet to come. It's all a matter of how you perceive it and what you do with the pieces that life deals you. Or with like just like that quote, I have a picture of it up on my wall. Just like I said, the key to success is playing the hand you were dealt like it was the hand that you wanted. And if you see life in that way, everything that is happening to you, it is happening for you. And so I love that.
Yeah, I heard Tony Robbins say that one time, and it always stuck with me. Everything that's happening to you in life is happening for you. So you just have to understand and contextualize it in a way that empowers you, or you know backstops your resilience so that you become even stronger. And it's an interesting message, societally, because we built a lot of currency around the idea of being a victim.
Mhm.
um, and I understand that some people justifiably identify with being a victim based on what they've been through, or what they've been subjected or subjugated to. But at the end of the day, you have to move forward, you have to move on. And are you finding, I mean, because you've been doing this for a number of years now, are you finding that there's more of a societal shift towards people almost wanting to champion aspects of their victim status and tell their story from that perspective, rather than reframing it from a place of, this happened to me, but this is why I'm stronger because of it?
Mm, yeah, and that's a really good question. I think sadly we see things on the news and media that tends to magnify the victim mentality, and we almost have this outlook of we want to get even and we're going to prove ourselves to people versus just trying to be one with others and love others equally. I think it really has to go back to the motive. Why are we doing what we are doing? Are we looking to make the world a better place? Or are we doing it to get revenge? And, there are people that sadly, they've been wounded by others and they remain victims their entire life. And they may have every right. I go back to what my mom told me whenever I got off of life support. The very fact that she told me, she said, Cody, don't lose sight of your vision. She knew and understood that I had every right to give up and play the victim card. And there's a lot of people in today's world, they have every right to play the victim. But my mom believed that there was something greater on the other side for her son. And just as she believed in me, I believe in everyone else that has had moments where life has not been so fair to them. You can be greater. Don't be a victim, be victorious. How has the trials and The tribulations of yesterday made you a better person. You don't have to stay stuck in that negativity, that victim mentality of trying to get even and revenge. That's not good. That's nothing good comes from that. And nothing will ever come good from it. It's just a matter of loving people. And
Well, I think to be fair, they get attention, right? And
yes.
and if attention is the currency, if
Mm,
attention is the objective, then you can understand. Like, I'm a big fan of working with artists all of these years. Why do people do what they do, right? Like,
mm,
asking that question rather than coming at it from a place of judgment, which, by the way, I've done plenty of that. But taking a step back and going, okay, why is this person hung up on this idea that breaking in the arts, for example, is harder for them than it's ever been in history for anybody else,
mm,
right? And then how do we unwind that and start to challenge some of those limiting beliefs so that they can forge a new pathway and realize, like you've pointed to many times in this podcast, that all of the things, all of those barriers, all of those obstacles actually made them a better, stronger, more resilient version of themselves and prepared them for the obstacles that they are about to receive and embrace in the future, right? It's like, that's important. And I think that if you're only focused on receiving attention and not where you want that attention to eventually take you,
mm.
then it becomes very easy to entertain the victim mentality. And again, like, it's hard to talk about this without people feeling like you're being callous, because I do recognize that there's oppression on this planet. And I do recognize that there are some people who have had a fucking raw deal, and this is wrong that they've been subjected to what they've been subjected to. But on the other side of that, you only have one choice, and that's to find the most optimistic um, beam of light that shines through all that pain and cling to it with everything you've got so that you can move forward in life. And it sounds like you're preaching that, practicing that, and executing that when you're out on the road. And that's just such an important message. And it resonates with everyone, not just the artistic community, but with everyone who's ever felt like they've been done wrong. And we all have to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I couldn't agree more. And I think what you said is powerful. It reminded me of what one of my mentors had said to me. He said, as far as playing and being stuck in that victim mentality, he was also a therapist and he helped a lot of people that had gone through difficult times. He said, Cody, he said, you wouldn't believe some of the stories that these individuals would tell me that they endured. Rape victims, people that seen family members getting shot in front of their eyes. And, there's that humanistic side of us. It's like, well, our hearts, we break because this person has endured such pain and we don't like that. But yet at the same time, he said, Cody, he said, in order for that person to move on, he said, I couldn't show them, I couldn't baby them in a roundabout way. It was like, all right, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Now, what are you going to do? Now, what are you going to do? And it
Right.
really is. It's just a matter of trying to brush off those emotions. All right, here's your life you got today. What are you going to make of it? You can't change it. You can only change what you do today. And it's hard to embrace that. It's no different than my scars. It's hard to embrace these scars. But yet, the moment I embrace them, it is the moment in which I can start moving on with my life. It's now a part of who I am. All right, how am I going to own them? And I
Right.
own
It's
there's a
sorry, go
oh
ahead.
no, I was going to say I own the scars, so the scars don't own me. So yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah, it's Will Smith once said, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility, right?
Mm,
Whatever it is that happened to you, whatever it is that you encountered, and again, it resonates. That message resonates or aligns very well with everything you're saying. Do you ever encounter people who are curious about your scars and approach you in somewhat of an inappropriate way? Like, oh my God, what the hell happened to you? Like, do you ever get that? And then how do you respond to that? Because that's got to be awkward.
well, that's funny. So I haven't had many adults I've had some, this like, a lot of older folks, they'll come up and want to touch my arms and mostly children. If I go speak or I'm around kids, they're just fascinated. It's just innocent. They see my scars. What is this? But a lot of what the adults say is just interesting. You hear different remarks coming at you. And I remember, so this is just, I'm just going to be real and blunt here because this is just how it is. I find it humorous. Uh, people's minds wander. I had 40% of my body severely burned. My scars are on my hands, my arms, my left leg. My entire left leg is scarred. Yeah, it was down fourth degree, down to bone and muscle, and my right foot is all scarred. But it's very sporadic where these are at. I don't know why that is. Whatever the heck burned me in the car, how my body was squished in there. But I remember asking my family. I told my mom. I said, and I asked her this when I came out of a coma. I said, "Listen," I said, is my goods? Is everything good down there?" And she said, "Yes." She's like, and she didn't think about it. And she talked to the doctors and nurses, and they're like, surprisingly, that can happen to folks. But it's interesting that you say that because in the beginning there was like some people, older women, like, is he okay down there? Yes. So I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've been tempted just to make a post. My junk is good. It was not harmed.
Yeah,
So you
fair
just
enough.
hear random. Yeah, that's probably too much information, but
No, no,
cheers.
no, no. I think that's exactly a real world description of some of the awkwardness that you must deal with, and um, it's interesting because kids always come at the world with such raw curiosity, and it's so beautiful. Um,
Mhm.
but as a parent, sometimes, and I have daughters, it's awkward to try to help them contain that in more socially acceptable manners while still allowing them and letting them know they're not doing anything wrong by asking questions.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I was curious about that. Not particularly about your junk. I'm glad everything's good
For
there.
what it's worth.
Congratulations. I'm glad it all works.
Thank you.
Um, but
Thank
uh,
you.
but yeah, it's always interesting to find out, people who have been through physically traumatic experience, how they are perceived and welcomed in the real world by actual people, right? Not
Yeah.
people just trying to necessarily be polite, but people who are morbidly curious to some degree, right? And we all
Mhm.
have that as part of our human nature, by the way. It's not
Yeah.
something to disconnect or feel guilty about. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was one of the questions that was sitting in the back of my mind. I'm like, I wonder what 40% of his body he's talking about. You know, 40% takes up a lot of real estate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you see, invalid point. And I've had other people, they tell me that. So, for what it's worth, there you have it.
Well,
And that's more so with adults. But to your point with children, there it is very innocent. And I think some of the most I've gotten to speak at a couple kids camps since all this went down. And of course, I had to get permission from the staff and the leadership to be able to, share some of the story because of the nature of it. It's a pretty graphic story, so I had to kind of, you know, tone it down. But they get the point, and to my, it was very rewarding to see the kids how they responded to it and the story and how it was encouraging them. And it's amazing. You think a child, maybe they're 10, 12 years old, but kids nowadays, it seems like their knowledge of life, I think because of social media, the phones, they're
YouTube
exposed.
University, baby.
Yes, they're
Yeah.
just exposed to all this information, and so they was getting it. They was you back whenever I was a kid, they're like, well, we don't want to discuss those things. They're children. But now it's like, well, these kids, they know. They're not stupid. They're pretty smart. And so it connected, and you hear stories. I mean, you got these young kids that are dealing with depression. Sadly, some of them are suicidal, and it breaks your heart. And it's like, okay, these are things that we have to address in an appropriate way, of course, but yet, they're struggling. How can we encourage them? And so my story, the scars that I carry, it connects. And to me, it just makes it all the more rewarding when you get to see an innocent child be encouraged because of, what happened.
What a great way to wrap this up. Thanks for doing this, Cody.
Oh, my pleasure, man. thank you for having me.
Best of luck in your future endeavors, and we'll be hitting you up to let you know when this airs. And excited to share it with our audience, and hopefully some of your big fans tune in too and check it out. I'm sure they'll be thrilled too.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, man.
Thank you.